Hi everyone. In this video, I will be discussing the contents of Chapter 2 of a research. However, the contents which I will be discussing in this video are specific only for the language research. However, most parts here are still applicable in the generic research. So before I proceed to my thorough discussion of the contents of a language research, let me first define two of the major terms which were used in this module. First one is research design. This section in the chapter 2 of a research contains the overall design of the research, which includes the research approach and specific methods to be used for data gathering and analysis. So later, I will be telling you what the research design is all about, including the expected contents of this section. Secondly, we have sampling procedure. This refers to the systematic method of choosing the participants or respondents for the data gathering procedure. Before we proceed, allow me to emphasize first that Chapter 2 or the contents of Chapter 2 may vary from one academic institution to another, because in other higher educational institutions, Chapter 2 contains the review of related literature and studies, whereas in other HEIs, Chapter 2 is exclusive only for the methodology. The review of related literature and studies is embedded in Chapter 1. That's for some other institutions. But in our context, Chapter 2 here is for methodology only. So anything that has something to do with the methods, the research design, the procedure, the participants or the respondents, the locale, and others form part of Chapter 2. So before I discuss the different types of qualitative research, and also later I'll be mentioning the different types of quantitative research, let's have first the different approaches of research. Although I had a previous discussion of the different approaches to research, the qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method, please do know that in Chapter 2 writing, we really need to emphasize here the approach that we will be using in our proposal. So first approach to research is qualitative research, and this should be mentioned also in your research design. Qualitative research is a scientific investigation wherein researchers are interested in understanding the meaning people have constructed. So it is assumed that meaning is mediated through the investigator's perceptions. And this approach to research is an effort to understand situations in their uniqueness as part of a particular context and interactions there. Now, what's pretty unique about qualitative research is that we delve into the phenomenon being studied more deeply. That means we do not simply look at the surface. We do not simply look at what we gather through surveys or other data gathering means. Qualitative research means that we have to go deeper, delve into the experiences, the feedback, the perspectives of people, so that you could really understand the phenomenon being studied. So this type of research usually involves field work. And it's not just any field work, it's rigorous field work because you need to substantiate your data very well. The researcher must go to the people, setting, sites, institution to observe behavior in its natural setting. It uses an inductive research strategy, as this type of research builds abstractions, concepts, hypotheses, or theories rather than tests the existing theory. As a matter of fact, when we conduct qualitative research, it's really expected that we do the thematic analysis, because our goal here is to categorize our data based on emerging themes or codes. Typically, qualitative findings are in the form of themes, as mentioned, categories, concepts, or tentative hypotheses or theories. The product of this type of approach is richly descriptive, means it's very verbose, it has to be wordy, as this is useful in providing detailed descriptions of complex phenomena. It is also helpful in crafting theories or conceptual frameworks and explaining these phenomena. Now, we have main types of qualitative research. So these are the specific designs under the qualitative approach. First one is case study. This attempts to shed light on a phenomenon by studying in-depth, a single case example of the aspects. The case can be an individual person, or it could also be multiple case study, group of people, or many individuals. So the goal here in case study is for you to really understand the case or the existing case and delve into the scrutiny of literature, the experiences of people, so that you could really understand what the case is all about. Now, case study is also unique because it follows a specific format, or it has its own template wherein you really need to be detailed in terms of discussing or describing the case at hand. That is one good way for you to really elaborate on the issue being studied. The second one is grounded theory. Now, among the types of qualitative research, personally, this one is the most challenging because in grounded, most challenging yet most interesting. Here, theory is developed inductively from a corpus of data acquired by a participant observer. So if you are interested in conducting a grounded theory research, well, you have to be very interested as well in developing your own theory based on your readings and data gathering. So here, it's either you develop your own theory or challenge an existing theory and propose your maybe modifications or alterations of the existing theory. So that is the purpose of a grounded theory. Now, what's the very essence of grounded theory is for you to prove or disprove an existing theory. This design is also very helpful in testing the existing theories that we already have now. Third one is phenomenology. Now, if you're into studying the experiences of people, understanding their triumphs, their victories, their challenges, phenomenology is the most appropriate design of qualitative research. This describes the structures of experience as they present themselves to consciousness without recourse to theory, deduction, or assumptions from other disciplines. What's also unique about phenomenology is that you get to go deeper into the experiences of your participants. That means when you ask questions, you do not simply ask shallow questions which do not really invite people doing narration or storytelling. Phenomenology allows people to share their innermost experiences, their emotions, their sentiments about the things happening around them or the things happening in their lives. So that is the very purpose of phenomenology. Of course, your goal here is to enlighten your readers about a certain matter or a certain subject or aspect of the lives of those people whom you studied or whom you will study. Okay. Next, we have ethnography. This focuses on the sociology of meaning through close field observation of socio-cultural phenomena. Typically, the ethnographer focuses on a community. In ethnography or ethnographic study, what you will do is that you really have to immerse yourself in the community. You have to be familiar with the activities done by the people within that community, study their patterns of behavior, study how they interact or transact with people within the community, and of course, study the rest of the things, material or emotional, existing within the community. You may also study artifacts or relics found in the community so that you can have additional data for you to substantiate your findings in an ethnographic study. Well, what's unique about ethnography is that you get to interact with people. It means you go deeper into people's culture, strings of beliefs, so that you could understand their experiences and their challenges within the community. Okay? And we have historical research. Now, this is a systematic collection and objective evaluation of data related to past occurrences to test hypotheses concerning causes, effects, or trends of these events that may help to explain present circumstances and anticipate future events. So what's unique with historical is that it's longitudinal, meaning you need to observe a specific phenomenon, gather data within a long period of time. Okay? That means you need to be diligent and patient enough in gathering data to substantiate your discussion of what is supposed to be part of history. Okay? And in order for you to do a comprehensive review of whatever you are studying, you will be needing an objective evaluation given a period. Okay, usually a long period so that you could really study the patterns and occurrences of whatever cause or effect relationships therein. Now we have typical methods of qualitative research. Lincoln in 2007 explained that naturalistic inquiry balances the inquiry focus by moving beyond tangible or measurable variables to focus on the social constructions of research participants. Working in the places where people live and work, naturalistic researchers draw on observations, interviews, and other sources of descriptive data as well as their own subjective experiences. When you say naturalistic inquiry, that means you go with the nature or the essence of life. That means you allow yourself to be immersed in a specific experience or community so that you yourself will have the first-hand experience of the participants or respondents. So here, the descriptive data is retrieved from the community or the field through a first-hand experience, which allows you to really feel the emotions and experience the tangible things commonly experienced by the people within the community. And the usual data gathering or data collection methods for this are observations. So when you observe, you really go to the community and observe what's happening there. And then you may also conduct interviews so that you can exchange information and then discuss certain things about the participants. And you could also have journal entries out of the observations that you will be conducting. Okay, you could also have examinations of tangible things within the community so that you could also have that first-hand experience of the things within the place. When how or why questions emerge, the preferred strategy is through a case study. It is best used when there is no clear boundary between the context and phenomenon. So I mentioned about case studies a while ago. It is also applicable to studies that focus on events within the context of real-life situations, as it generally observes a person or a small number of individuals in the case of multiple case study on their own or in a group. Example, a family, a class, a work team, or a community of practice. So according to Duff in 2014, cases are studied to provide an understanding of individuals' experiences, issues, insights, developmental pathways, or performance within a particular linguistic, social, or educational context. One thing that you really need to remember when conducting a case study is that the case should be very specific. When you try let's say, when you try to look at the challenges or the triumphs of the people or the participants whom you consider as your participants in your study, without identifying the specific aspect of these challenges or triumphs, then it will not qualify as a case study. It's more of a phenomenological inquiry. Case study means you need to zero in. You need to narrow down your concern or your topic so that you could really focus on the case and substantiate on whatever data you will be gathering for the enlightenment on that case. The third one is content analysis. This one is widely used for identifying patterns in communication. To conduct this type of study, it involves a systematical collection of data from written sources such as books, newspapers, and magazines, or oral references such as speeches and interviews or visual materials. There are films and photographs, and even available web content and social media posts. So from the word itself, content analysis, you will do a rigorous analysis or examination of the contents of a specific genre or text. So Luo in 2020 wrote that researchers use content analysis to find out about the purposes, messages, and effects of communication content. They can also make inferences about the producers and audience of the texts they analyze. For example, we are very concerned about the quality of books or textbooks used by the kindergarten pupils or grades 1 to 3 pupils of public schools in the Philippines. So in order for you to scrutinize the contents of the book and make sure that you evaluate the books or the references accurately, then you will be needing rubrics or guides. And the method or the appropriate method to be used in this context is a content analysis, because you will be doing a rigorous analysis or evaluation of a material to check whether or not the contents are appropriate or effective. Okay? Then we also have focus group discussion, or we commonly call it as FGD. This one is a method used for specific concerns. It is also an excellent way to gather individuals with similar experiences discuss particular issues or topics of interest. So when you say FGD, that means, let's say you already have the participants, you gather them all together and conduct an interview with them. But it's not just any typical interview, because in an FGD, you will have to have meaningful or substantial exchanges of information and experiences with the participants involved in this focus group discussion. That means you are going to ask open-ended questions to elicit more information based on the experiences that they want to share. Allowing them to narrate something or tell a story about their lives will actually elicit more information about the subject or the topic you are studying. So the FGD is the most essential or the most effective or efficient way for you to gather information in just one gathering or one sitting only. So this process draws upon its participants' beliefs, reactions, and experiences, which means narrowing down individuals of the community who will provide the researcher with the best information needed for research. So literature says that maximum number of people to be involved in a focus group discussion is usually 8 to 10 individuals, but others opt for 5 individuals only, depending on the number of participants chosen, original number of participants or sample size chosen for the research. So these are the important concepts about qualitative research. Now let's jump to my discussion on quantitative research. In the context of language research, well, it's pretty rare to conduct quantitative research because most of the time, qualitative approach is used in language research. By the way, before I proceed to this one, in language research, we also have discourse analysis as one of the methods of research. So for sure, those who have been introduced to Introduction to Linguistics, you already have an idea of what discourse analysis is and how it is conducted. Now, going back for quantitative research, this approach emphasizes objective measurements and the statistical, mathematical, or numerical analysis of data collected through polls, questionnaires, and surveys, or by manipulating pre-existing statistical data using computational techniques. This is according to Babi in 2010. Now, what's great about quantitative research is that everything is really systematic with this one, because you just have the statistical instrument or tool to be used, and then the statistics does the analysis for you. Okay, and the analysis is just so accurate because, of course, we cannot challenge the power of statistics when it comes to analysis. Statistics will really allow you to have an organized or systematic glimpse or systematic picture of how research analysis is done for quantitative contexts. It is to determine the relationship between the independent and the dependent variables. We know that if it is a quantitative research, we have 2 types of variables, independent and dependent variable, but we also have the moderating variable as our 3rd type of variable, which may cause a change or which may affect either the independent or the dependent variable. Quantitative research primarily deals with logic, numbers, and objective stance. Data are usually gathered using structured research instruments, and data are in the form of numbers and statistics, often arranged in tables, charts, figures, or other non-prose or non-textual forms. So we have typical methods of quantitative research. First one is studying the population and sampling. You have to ask, where did the data come from? How robust is it? Note where gaps exist or what was excluded. And you have to note the procedures used for their selection. So when you choose the sample size of your study out of the population, you do not randomly select people. There has to be a system used so that everything goes organized in choosing your respondents for your quantitative research. Okay? To describe the tools and methods used to collect information and identify the variables being measured is called data collection. Data may be pre-existing, that is government data, let's say, the statistics, okay? Or you gathered it yourself as the researcher. Now, when we talk about data analysis in the context of quantitative research, this one describes the procedures for processing and analyzing the data. If appropriate, you have to specify the specific instruments of analysis used to study each research objective, including mathematical techniques and the type of computer software used to manipulate the data. Let's say you'll be using inferential statistics or other types of statistics. So you have to mention there that for data analysis, you'll be using, let's say, SPSS to aid you in the quantifying or the quantification of the data and the interpretation as well of the data that we have just presented through non-post materials. One thing that you need to remember when it comes to the conduct of quantitative research is the sampling procedure. This one is very important because you have to systematically choose your respondents. You do not simply approach a person and ask him or her to be part of your study. In quantitative research, there has to be a sampling procedure that needs to be followed or needs to be observed when choosing your sample out of the population. There are two major types of sampling procedure. The first one is probability sampling. The second one is the non-probability sampling. When you say probability sampling, an equal chance of participation in the sampling or selection process is given to every member. Okay, but when you say non-probability sampling, here, random selection of subjects is disregarded. Hence, choosing the topic based on the availability or the purpose of the study. What's good about a probability sampling is that because it is very systematic, everyone within the population is given the chance to be part of the study. On one hand, when you say non-probability sampling, you choose participants based on the inclusion or selection criteria. Whoever is deemed qualified to become part of your study, then these people are automatically considered as your participants. So that's the difference between the two. So we have specific types of probability sampling. First one is simple random sampling. You choose respondents from the population. So there are many ways on how you do the random sampling. You can do the fishbowl sampling wherein you have the draw lots or the lottery sampling. You have the fishbowl there, and then you simply draw names who shall be part, names or codes who shall be part of your respondents in your study. We also have systematic sampling. So this one, let's say you have the list of all the potential respondents of your study. You pick out from the list every 5th or 8th member, depending on you, listed until the completion of the desired total number of respondents. So let's say you have a complete list there, and then you label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you draw lots again, and then whatever number is picked, then what name corresponds to that number, automatically that person bearing that name will be part of your study as a respondent. We also have stratified sampling. The group comprising the sample is chosen in a way that such a group is liable to subdivision during the data stage analysis. So here in stratified sampling, you group individuals. For example, according to sections, according to grade level, according to age bracket. So that's stratified sampling. We also have cluster sampling, selecting respondents in clusters rather than separate individuals. Cluster sampling is usually used for big scale sampling. For example, you are to survey individuals from the different regions of the Philippines or the country. In order for you to do this one, of course, you cannot use simple or systematic sampling, right? Because it will be tedious on your end. So what you will do is to cluster the participants per region, and then per region, maybe per district, per district, per barangay, per municipality, or whatsoever. So you do it that way. You cluster, you narrow down so that you could get into the smallest cluster. And then within the smallest cluster, you can use any of these existing probability sampling procedures. You can use simple random sampling already or systematic sampling. It depends on you. So if we have probability sampling, we also have non-probability sampling. So we have convenient sampling. It is known as accidental or incidental sampling. So let's say you go to a room and then you want to interview groups of students. So whoever is in that room, automatically they are part or considered as your participants in your research. You also have quota sampling. You choose specific samples that correspond to the population in terms of 1, 2, or more characteristics. Let's say within the day, you have set, let's say, 5 people to be interviewed. And then based on the selection criteria, you just choose 5. Okay? Whoever is qualified based on the selection criteria that you set. And then we also have availability sampling, picking out people who are easy to locate and willing to establish contact with the researcher. Usually for the availability sampling, you do this because of um, relationship or accessibility. Let's say it's easier for you to conduct an interview with this person because this person is your acquaintance. So you do it that way. We also have snowball sampling or the referral sampling. You select samples from several alternative samples like drug dependents, human traffickers, stray children, and others. Let's say you have had interviewed already, let's say 6, but you will be needing 10 more people to be interviewed. So you ask these 6 people if they know someone who is qualified based on the selection criteria that you set. And then once they have been referred, automatically those referred individuals may now be considered as your participants in your research. So that's snowball sampling. Apart from the sampling procedure, you also need to take note of the research locale. So I'm sure most of you are familiar already with this one. Locale is the place or setting of the study. So this is where you will conduct your paper. Briefly, it describes the site from where the study is conducted. It also shows the target population. So according to Given in 2008, the research setting or the locale can be seen as the physical, social, and cultural site in which the researcher conducts the study. So the research locale doesn't have to be a geographical location alone. In these studies, the influence of cultural behavior and understanding of phenomenon gets recognized. Therefore, it is central in defining the setting. Furthermore, the results may give way for future projects which can be applied outside the research setting. So locale, again, is not only about the geographical location. You may also cite the social and the cultural ambience or atmosphere where the study will be conducted or was conducted. Another thing that you need to learn is about research corpora. This one is for language research. So if you are going to analyze bodies of texts, then you need to have this section in your chapter 2. According to David in 1992, corpus is a collection of linguistic data either compiled as written texts or as transcription of recorded speech. The primary purpose of the corpus is to verify a hypothesis about language. For example, to determine how the usage of a particular sound word or syntactic construction varies. Usually, corpus is retrieved from a database, an online database. Okay, and the definition for a corpus may vary from one institution to another because there are some academic institutions where they consider already bodies of text, the physical ones, those which were really written on sheets of paper as research corpora already. But for other institutions, they consider those that are present in databases only as research corpora. We also have research instruments. So here, it's very important that we be very particular with the instruments that we will be using. We know that data are the lifeblood of research. They make research empirical, and as such, we must have the proper instrument to gather, collate, and analyze it. A data instrument or a data collection instrument is the means, whether physical or non-physical, of producing qualitative or quantitative data to be analyzed and interpreted. So here, you will be requiring some validation evidence that the data is sufficiently related to the construct of interest. So that is why it's very important that you choose the most appropriate research instruments, because if your research instruments are faulty, then definitely you will be producing also erroneous data or irrelevant data. You have to check each of the contents of your research instrument to make sure that all variables or all stipulations within that instrument are relevant or related to the goal of your research. A good data collection instrument can measure a construct, which is a concept that is inferred based on observable phenomena. This construct will help in the analysis and understanding of events and phenomena. In research, when choosing your data collection instrument, you have to ensure that it is validated. That's why we assign validators to validate the contents of your instrument. This means that you should know where it comes from, how will it collect the necessary data, and who will manage it. Validity as a concept should always measure what it should measure. So you always go back to your research objectives or statement of the problem or the purpose of your study. And double check if the contents of your research instrument hit all of the contents of hit all of the objectives that you have just set in your research objectives or statement of the problem. Additionally, make sure that your data instrument in your research construct has a fairly strong connection. There should be relevance. For instance, it's no good employing a criterion reference test if you're into research or on language acquisition in children, right? That's because the data collection instrument and the construct do not match. So for quantitative research, we have statistical analysis, or for qualitative research, we have data analysis. Once you have a pile of gathered or coded data in front of you, it is now time to conduct the basic analysis and evaluation of the data. Data do not speak for themselves. They only make sense in the context of research design, theory, purpose, and research questions. This is where statistical analysis comes in. So it is defined as the science of collecting, exploring, and presenting large amounts of data to discover underlying patterns and trends. And we use statistical analysis for us to systematically analyze a body of data. If your research design is quantitative, it will most likely require a large amount of data to work properly. For quantitative research, statistical analysis can be categorized as either descriptive or inferential. So when you say descriptive analysis, as the name suggests, it helps in describing the data. It gives the summary of data in a way that meaningful information can be interpreted from it. Using descriptive analysis, we do not get to a conclusion. However, we get to know what in the data is. That is, we get to know the quantitative description of the data. So we only use, for descriptive analysis, we use the mean, median, and mode only. Okay, getting the mean of something, but it descriptively presents your data. However, if you are into hardcore analysis already or interpretation of your data, then you have to use inferential analysis or inferential statistics. This one is used to generalize the population using samples where the sample is drawn from the population itself. Inferential statistics comes from the fact that the sampling naturally incurs sampling errors and is thus not expected to represent the population perfectly. Okay, here examples are estimating parameters, testing of statistical hypotheses, and we have a lot of inferential statistical tools that we can use, and I'm pretty sure those who are in the field of statistics can really help us in this. On one hand, for qualitative research, especially language researches, yields this one mainly unstructured text-based data, which requires different approach. These textual data could be taken from interviews, observation notes, diary entries, and other text-based data sources. And what's quite difficult with the analysis of qualitative data is that you have to be very verbose. You need to critically examine the words present in the data so that you could have a meaningful and accurate interpretation. While quantitative methods use statistical methods, qualitative research needs to explore values, meanings, beliefs, patterns, experiences, and themes out of the text or phenomenon under investigation. One common data analysis procedure that we use when qualitative approach is used is the thematic analysis. So we generate codes and then themes. We categorize thoughts or ideas or patterns of emotions to themes, which will, of course, generally speak about the bulk of data that you have. Tesh in 1990 mentioned that data analysis in qualitative research is an eclectic process. This is because it coincides and is iterative with data collection, data interpretation, and report writing. Here is the simplified outline for data analysis. So first one, this is in the context of qualitative research. First one, you need to read inputs and notice topics. Get sense of the whole, read everything carefully. If you have their interview responses as your data, then you have to reread the transcript so that you will really get the emotions or the patterns of beliefs present in the text. And then after that one, you need to find patterns, identify the coding procedure to be used to reduce information to themes or categories, cluster together similar topics, and arrange them together in topics based on preliminary thought themes. After this one, you need to present these generated data in matrices. A matrix, which is a visual image of information, should display information in spatial format systematically to the reader. So you can create comparison tables or hierarchical trees to present themes and relations. So you can simply write or make a table where on the first column you have the themes, and then in the second column you have the verbatim responses from where the themes have been generated. Then you need to revisit data with topics. This time you can abbreviate the topics as codes. You reanalyze in light of new topics or codes. They group similar categories, search for trends by frequency. And then you identify themes. Themes can be taken through content analysis generated from literature review or embedded in research questions. And then you finalize themes and develop ideas. So here you have to finalize the themes, which will be the final set of data to be presented in your results and discussion. So perform preliminary analysis on material in each theme identified. Now, data analysis can be done manually or with the help of a computer software. So we have for qualitative research, we have in vivo, which can really help you in generating word cloud. If you want to feel close to the data, then you can choose the manual data analysis. That means you have to really immerse yourself and get into the data so that you can really feel the emotions or the meanings behind the words uttered by the participants. However, if the data set is too huge, you can employ data analysis programs such as what mentioned a while ago, in vivo, or we also have ethnograph. Another very important thing that you need to include in your chapter 2 is ethical considerations. So in some other institutions or higher educational academies, we have ethics committee, research ethics committee, which takes charge of the review of the ethical considerations of the studies, both for the undergraduate and the graduate programs. But there are also other institutions which don't have this kind of committee, or yeah, which do not have this kind of committee to review the ethical considerations of the students' studies. Like any other research activity, whether simple or complex, there are ethical considerations. Yes, and ethical considerations are very, very important in the context of research. Researchers may face dilemmas during fieldwork and data analysis. That's true. That's why Mas, Huberman, and Saldana in 2014 laid out some of the ethical considerations in research. First one is on the worthiness of the project. Ask yourself, is my prospect study worth it? Is it really something that has this sense of urgency? Is it congruent with the values that are important to me? Some studies are pursued in a shallow way and done half-heartedly. This is because the subject is without significance or real meaning to you. So you have to choose a subject or a topic that really has significance to you as the researcher. Without this significance, definitely you will have no passion in conducting or finishing your study. Second one is competence. Ask yourself, do I and my fellow researchers have the expertise to carry out a good quality study? Do you have enough knowledge to discuss something about this research topic? When you delve into a research subject with unacknowledged incompetence, this will lead to poor research material. That's very true. You don't have to start as an expert. The best way for you, or the best way to go, is to seek help and support from teachers or research supervisors who can assist you on the right path to knowing the research process better. So that is why you have research personnel to aid you in the entire conduct of your study. We also have informed consent. Ask yourself, did the participants give their full consent to participate freely in my research, fully voluntary and uncoerced? Okay, did they freely give their permission that they be considered as part of your study? Your participants need to know about the full information in which your study will entail. This is why when you have participants to be interviewed or participants who will be asked to answer questionnaires, informed consent is really a prerequisite. That means you have to ask them to sign first on the informed consent form before they be asked to participate in your study. You also need to consider about the harm and risk. Ask yourself, will this study hurt the people involved, most especially for those conducting experiments or experimental studies? Harm and risk do not have to be physical. They may come in the form of blowing the participant's self-esteem or destroying a company brand under study. You have to ensure that results and recommendations are constructive than destructive. And you have to be very careful with this one because there are times when you conduct the interview with your participants and these interviews have emotional effects to the participants. Sometimes they get triggered about their experiences, about the things that they will be sharing with the group. So you have to be careful with this one. Next thing is honesty and trust. Ask yourself, am I telling the truth? Are you being objective or subjective? Am I trusted? Some researchers have reported deceiving respondents on the true nature of their inquiry. They even fooled respondents just for them to get respondents for the paper. Others create fake personas to gain knowledge or access to participant information. So sometimes they fake. They become a member of this organization just to have the feels of how it is to be part of it, and then secretly they write papers already. That's a no-no, okay? That's against the ethical considerations. Create an authentic relationship full of honesty and trust with your participants. Respect delicate and sensitive topics that they may not share with you. So if there are aspects of their lives or experiences which they are not willing to share with you, then you have to respect them, okay? Privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity. Ask yourself, will my study cause unnecessary intrusions? Can I safeguard my participants' confidential information? In most cases, participants give their informed consent to the researchers because they are assured of their privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity. So once you are done conducting your study, you have to make sure, really make sure that the identities of your participants are not divulged. Otherwise, it goes against your policies on privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity. Intervention and advocacy. Ask yourself, what do I do when I see harmful, illegal, and wrongful behavior in others during a study? Instances like this can cause anguish on the part of the researcher. As Mas, Huberman, and Saldana said, if you decide to withhold knowledge in favor of continued access, then your public reports and your conceptualization and explanatory theories may become lopsided. So you have to have intervention in cases like this. You need to also have research integrity and quality. Ask yourself, is my study conducted in the established standards and practices of research? And when we talk about integrity, you should observe full honesty. Avoid manipulating your data. Do not alter or modify contents of your data. And then, ownership of data and conclusions. Ask yourself, who owns your research and who controls its distribution? This is especially true for commission and collaborative researches. Okay? So you have to be very clear with the institution who shall own your data or who shall own your research after the conduct. And then use and misuse of results. Ask yourself, do I have an obligation to see to it that my findings are used appropriately? In some cases, research findings can be taken out of context and used to advance interest. So you have to see to it that your results are not used in this way. So if you look at it, the conduct of chapter 2 or the writing of your chapter 2 might become so tedious. So you have to really consider all the time the things that you need to include in your chapter 2, or else there might be some missing parts. By the way, in some other institutions, they also include the role of the researchers and trustworthiness of the study, but it's just institution specific. It depends on the institution whether or not they prescribe these as parts or sections of chapter 2. So I hope everything is clear with regard to this discussion, chapter 2. So if you have questions, can you post them on the open forum? Or if not, can you comment them here under this video? Thank you.